We're called to order this meeting of the Siloam Springs Board of Directors for Street and Sidewalk Maintenance and Repair Master Plan Update. Steve?
I assume it's okay to take my mask off at the podium?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board, Steve Gorzek, Public Works Director. I'll spare you that lengthy title again since the mayor just said it, but that's what I'll be presenting this evening. For those of you who weren't here 3 years ago, this plan was started in 2018 and adopted by the board at that time. And every 3 years, the plan says every 3 years it'll come back to the board for an update and then ultimate approval and possibly the next board meeting, depending on how many questions you hit me with and how many things I got to change. So let's just jump right into it. I just mentioned the 2018 in the resolution. The goal of the plan is to proactively approach street deterioration as opposed to reactively in the short term, so that we can improve the integrity of the streets. We've got a lot of streets that need some TLC, some more than others, and that's the whole idea of this plan, is to keep ourselves on track and keep up with keeping the streets drivable and not a mess. There's 114 miles of city-maintained streets. I think, what was it, 128, I think, was total. That included state highways and everything, but the streets that we maintain is 114 miles. The conditions were assessed, and we had a company come out and do an assessment in 2016, and if they're not already in town, they will be in town shortly to do another assessment, because I wanted to have another one done in 5 years so that they can drive the streets again and reassess, because we've done some street work. So I want to see what in the last 5 years they show as, basically re-rate the streets and what they look like after 5 years. The ratings are, well, let me jump back. The street conditions are assessed and they're provided with a matrix rating, and the key to this sentence is the conditions, the street conditions. We're looking at just the pavement, okay? We're not looking at curb and gutter or things like that, just the pavement. So that's the primary goal of this plan, at least when it comes to the streets. The ratings, they range from excellent all the way down to poor. Believe it or not, we have some excellent streets in town, so, and I'll cover those in a little bit. We also have some poor ones, but it's not as bad as we may think. I know this is difficult to see, but this is the map that was created when the assessment was done, and this particular map is one that was updated this year. Our GIS analyst had taken the map that I had given from the previous assessment, and then I gave him how many feet of streets that we have done work on and what kind of work we did and what the ratings were and what they are now as a result of the work we've done. So he was able to incorporate all that in this map. But I didn't expect anybody to be able to see this map really good. I just wanted to point out primarily, though, at least up on the big screen, it works even better. There's not that much red. Okay, there are some sections, but overall there's really not that much red, and I'll cover that here shortly. Now, with the new assessment, we'll have another map like this, but 5 years when it comes to technology is a big deal, because it's going to be the same group that's going to do this assessment, but they will provide a map that's a lot higher definition, and they had a program 5 years ago that worked for them, but we couldn't get it to work. And what they have done over the last 5 years is rework that program so that we'll be able to use it. And what that will be is I'll be able to take this map and split it to half a screen, and then the other half of the screen will actually, you'll see a red dot on the map, and then I'll be able to drive the street on the other side of the map. So where they did the assessment, they have a camera on the vehicle, and when it says, you get into a neighborhood that says poor, we can see just how poor what they're calling poor, what the condition is just by looking at it. But the neat thing will be, hopefully in 3 years, in 3 years I better have figured out how to work that program, but I'll be able to come back and say, here's that split screen I was talking about. So, we can watch this thing drive around town. Okay, so based on that map, and you see the numbers there, it ranges from 2.5 miles of excellent streets and down to 1.5 miles of poor. And if you notice, the majority of all those, of the 114 miles of streets are good and fair. I mean, we've got decent streets. They just, like I said, you need a little TLC, and I'll get into what it can take to make a fair street good and a good street back to excellent. But we're down to 1.5 miles of poor. Now, by the end of this year, poor will drop to 1 mile, and excellent will increase 3 miles. So basically, we're going to lose half a mile on the poor and add it to the excellent. And that half a mile is Kenwood that we're currently working on from Lincoln to 412. Plus, we finished Lake Francis from the railroad tracks to Lincoln in 2021. So about February, March this year. So I'm including those 2 streets in that half mile, and that'll change our rating because those streets are both rebuilds. So here's how the group that did the assessment, this is how they come up with the ratings from excellent down to poor. I gave it a numeric rating from 5 down to 1. And then, as you see in the columns, the visible distress, which means, what's the street suffering from? Good streets, it's like it says, some traffic wear. There's some cracking that go the length of the street. And the cracks are anywhere from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, or the traverse cracks of just 1/4 inch, the ones that are going across. All the way down to poor, which is, it's just done. Like Lake Francis was from Lincoln to the railroad tracks, it was nothing but pothole patches. So in a case like that, it has to do with subgrade, which is like the foundation, if you will, on a house. The subgrade is what you build the street on, and that subgrade was not any good. It was loose dirt rather than compacted dirt. So when we tore the street out, we put in red dirt, we compacted it, then we put in base, which you'll see if you drive past Kenwood on Lincoln or off of 412, you'll notice Kenwood's all gravel now. Well, that's the base coat. So that's a loose gravel that's been compacted. And then after the gravel will be what we call the binder course of asphalt, which is asphalt that's got large rock in it. And then on top of that will be the finish coat, which is what you see on the pavement when you drive around. It's asphalt that's got smaller gravel in it. Now, one of them I might point out too before I get to the next slide, the critical streets, ones where you have alligator cracking, it's just cracks that look like a spider web just all over the place. Those can be, depending on what the subgrade looks like, can be remedied with just a simple mill and overlay. And we've got the equipment to do that. So the streets that are fair and good, I mentioned that the majority of the streets that we have are in those 2 categories. They can be treated with a fog seal, which it's an emulsion that is primarily oil, and what a fog seal will do is you spread the oil on the street like we did on Mount Olive from Sherry Whitlock up to around Tahlequah, I believe it was. You put the oil on the street because the asphalt has oil in it, but over the years the asphalt wears out, so it's like repainting your house. You may like the color you've got, but it's faded. The streets will do the same thing. They'll start to fade. If you notice a brand new street, it's nice and black, and and then over time it starts to fade and looks kind of gray. Well, that fog seal will bring the pavement back, and it'll be a nice black color again, and it'll be more pliable. It'll be able to move better with the traffic on it. And then there's scrub seals, which is like a fog seal, except you drag something behind it and you basically push it into the asphalt. But depending on the traffic volume, 3 to 5 years is what you'll get out of it before you got to do it again. A good example of that would be downtown. The streets downtown were done anywhere between 3 and 5 years ago, so it's time to do it again. I mean, when we put the fog seal down, or when the contractor did, the street looked better, and it lasted us another period of time without having to do some major repairs. So we'll look at fog sealing that again. The streets that are classified as critical, I just explained a little bit ago. Mill and overlay is usually the cure for that. The ones that are lost and poor, they just need a complete rebuild. But again, the subgrade is generally the cause of that. Okay, so here's the street projects that this year through 2024 that we've got on this plan. In 2021, as soon as the guys finish Kenwood, which shouldn't be too much longer depending on the how the concrete world is, because it's been kind of difficult lately. If you want to order some, even though we're on their order list, it sometimes will take as much as 2 weeks, if not longer, to get concrete anymore. So we still have some concrete work to do. Now that the curb and gutter's in on Kenwood, they have to basically tie the curb into the storm inlet boxes. So they have to pour concrete and make that slope so where water will run down the curb and then it turns and goes into the inlet box. Plus they still have to build the inlet tops, I believe. So a lot of concrete still to do, but it's you can have everything ready to go, and then you're just at the mercy of the concrete company as to when they can bring it out, because there's just so much work going on. Then the other one, as soon as they're finished with that, they'll jump over to Simon Sager and complete that. That one will take us, will basically connect 412 to Tahlequah with this last phase. Now the overlay project I mentioned on there, that's the one that was recently done by a company called APAC. And that was on our list of things to do, but we received a grant for that. So it was a $300,000 project, because we only intended to go from Holly to University and stop at the intersection. But with the grant, we were able to go at the intersection of University and Holly and head back east and go across Dogwood, do the intersection at Dogwood, and then basically connect where we left off on University, just on the other side of the little concrete bridge. And our portion of that was $18,854 out of a $300,000 project. So 22, got Villa View. Villa View was supposed to be this year, but we're not going to finish Simon Sager most likely this year. There's just too many other things that are slowing us down. So Villa View is going on next year. Lake Francis from Washington to the railroad tracks, and it may end up going further than that depending on the cost. But that one, as you notice, there's a column over on the right that mentions the contractor's cost estimate. That one we're looking at possibly contracting out, because it's going to take a while to do. It'll allow us to do the rest of the things that are on that list, but it's $750,000 is the engineer's estimate to do this in-house, and it's $2.6 million for a contractor to do it. So that's one of those projects, I believe, that was on the list of bond projects, I think, that Christina had presented with the like 13 different street projects and their cost and how we would go about trying to fund those. That was one of them on that list. One of the big ones for 2023 is the rebuild of Sager Creek Drive. That connects Hyco to Lincoln. It's a concrete street, as is the entire subdivision that comes off of Sager Creek Drive, but it's beat up. I mean, the panels of concrete are are coming up. There's loose concrete in there. It just needs to be taken out. But again, it's probably a subgrade issue, so that's going to be a rebuild. We'll have to go back in and put new subgrade in and reinforce the foundation of the street. But it's maybe not as heavily traveled as it will be when it's done, because it's a connecting street. I mean, it's a shortcut. And then we've got some of the smaller ones, the overlays and the fog seals. We are looking at an overlay on Benton Street out here from Wright down to Dogwood. That'll improve that area because there's a lot of patches there where we've done water line work and that type of stuff. And then the fog seals. Those are, as you can see, comparatively speaking, they're inexpensive. It's oil and additives in the oil. So we can do a lot of fog sealing, and these are streets that have a 3 or a 4 rating. In this case, all the fog seals you see on this screen are 3s. We can bring those up to a 4. All right, so 2024, one of them, again, it's another one that I put a contractor's estimate on, and that is Oak Crest from Don Hill to Hyco. That's been on the books, and there was somebody that came in to the board meeting recently and was talking about how bad that street is. We know it's on the list, but it's 2024. And again, it's going to be a question of whether we do the project or if a contractor does it. Based on what I was hearing, my intention of Oak Crest was just to mill and overlay the sections, particularly over on the east third, maybe half of Oak Crest where it comes out at Hyco. There's a lot of pothole patches there. That could be torn up, and if the subgrade's needing some work, we can do that and then put new asphalt down. The rest of it to Don Hill Road isn't in that bad a shape, and it could be mill and overlaid and taken care of. However, I heard the street needs to be a little wider. I don't disagree that the approach onto Don Hill Road needs to be wider because those ditches on either side are pretty deep and you'll lose a car in those. So, that needs to be improved. And then there was going to be sidewalk all through there. So if we have to do all that, we're looking at the majority of a year. So if we can find the funding, then the contractor doing that project would help us a lot because, again, it'll allow us to do the rest of the things that are on that list. And again, these are 2 and 3 on Helena. Basically, that would be all new pavement from Mount Olive all the way around to Sherry Whitlock, because I've got it broken up into Mount Olive to Britt, and then on Britt from Helena to Sherry Whitlock. So that whole section would be improved. Again, it's a heavily traveled street. Okay, so I talked about Lake Francis Drive from Washington to the railroad tracks. That project will eliminate the S-curve, and a side path would be added as well. And again, like I mentioned, it's possibly we'll possibly be contracting that project. But, and like I said, we'll see based on the cost whether we go any further than that. Because if you think about it, if you go west of Washington, we left off by Chacon Park with new asphalt. So if you come off of Mount Olive and you drive on this new street, and all of a sudden the street's not so pretty anymore, and then all of a sudden it's new again, people may say, "What, did you guys forget that or something?" So we're going to see what it'll cost to go that little stretch to do it all and have it all new pavement. And then Villa View from Sycamore Heights to the city limits, that'll be a complete rebuild. That asphalt was just put right on top of a dirt road back when it was a county road. So it needs to be, the dirt needs to be taken out, new dirt put in and compacted, and like I was explaining on a couple other projects. So it'll be a complete rebuild, but we will also redo that intersection at Sycamore Heights and Villa View. There's a great big, I don't know where we found that pipe, but it's a big cast iron pipe. I mean, it's probably 4 or 5 foot in diameter. And we'll improve that as well because of the drainage. So the major projects for 23, I talked about Sager Creek Drive and the Benton Street overlay from Wright to Dogwood. Okay, so sidewalks. We've got about 57 miles of sidewalks in the city. Almost half, a little over half of them have been surveyed. And I had a note on that. Oh, yeah, if some of you may have noticed, but the company that does the sidewalk repairs is in town, and they're shaving off these offsets in the sidewalks, and they should be finished with that by the end of this week, because the weather looks like it's going to cooperate. We've used this company in the past. We've used them since 2017, and they're, besides the survey, they do the repair. Now they don't do replacement. They're just shaving off those high spots. The repair is on us, or the replacement is on us. The sidewalks that are in such bad shape that trying to mill those down is beyond hope. So we do have sections of sidewalk that need replaced, and we'll be working on that. But by the end of this year, we'll have everything surveyed north of 412, and next year we'll move to the south side of 412. The next one talks about there was over 1,400 repairable trip hazards that were identified from 2017. So we've been having these guys come out every year and deal with these trip hazards. Now the trip hazards go from a height of 1/4 of an inch to 2 inch. Now 1/4 of an inch doesn't sound like much, but as you see on there, the ADA their definition of what a trip hazard is. And if you think about it, if you're an old person, and I'm going to say older than me, and you're able to lift your legs when you walk, that's great. But what about a blind person who has a stick and is walking like this? 1/4 of an inch, they'll feel that. So that's the reason for eliminating the 1/4 inch separation. This I put up just as an idea of what they do when these guys come out and survey. Now, I just am showing the trip hazards that go from an inch or 1/2 inch to 2 inches. There's another one that goes from 3/8, from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. So if I didn't have one slide that I could show that had them all on there, but when you're talking about 1,400 trip hazards, that a lot of that map is just different colors. There's yellows and reds and that type of thing. I think they used yellow for the smaller separations from the 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. So the map is dotted. So I just wanted to show the kind of work that they do and what kind of thing they provide us to show us what they discovered. So the company, and I haven't mentioned it yet, but they're called Precision Safe Sidewalks. They have a rating on sidewalks just like the other company has a rating on streets, and they just go from low to high priority, low, mid, and high. And as you can see on there, it describes what each one is. Now, the high priority, you can't get through there with a wheelchair, whereas the low priority, you can, but there's, the integrity of the concrete hasn't been compromised, but, they could shave it down and repair it. When it gets to high priority, that's the kind of thing where we've got to come in and take out a section of sidewalk and just replace it. So I just wanted to mention that as capital improvements are added each budget year, we'll keep this plan updated. In fact, this plan is a living document, I call it, because if we need to make some changes to this plan, particularly with the I just lost the word for it. the table that I showed earlier with the streets that we plan on doing or the streets that we have done. If we need to modify that, then that's fine. I mean, we'll modify that. But what I was showing you is what our plans were as far as street repairs and replacements or replacements. So again, when 2024 rolls around, some of those things may have changed. Same goes with the sidewalks. In 3 years, since this took, would it be 6 years? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, yeah, 6 years. It took us 6 years to get everything north of 412 done. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have more sidewalks north of 412 than we do south. And that'll remain to be seen. But my guess is in 3 years, if we keep bringing them out every year, that we'll have the majority, if not all, the sidewalks south of 412 repaired. And then we'll move on to trying to budget for major replacement jobs. All right, so I know that was, I kind of flew through that. So we've got 15 minutes for questions, if any of you have any questions.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I do have one question, and I know everybody in their neighborhood has an area that they're concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to talk about my neighborhood because I walk it twice a day. And this morning when I walked, there's a lot of cracking, but there is now big chunks of asphalt coming up. I don't even know if it's actually asphalt. I don't really know what it is. It's about this deep, and then you can see the second layer below that. And then there has been some repair where there's been some street cuts,
Mm-hmm.
and it has sunk. And I only noticed this because we don't have any sidewalks, so it's very difficult to walk without noticing all of that. And it was rated, and it's a very short street, it was rated as fair.
Right.
Does that sound like that's what it should be?
Well, based on what you're saying, the asphalt where you said there was a chunk of asphalt and you could see something underneath it.
I would say it's about 2 feet square. This one piece is
Right.
gone, and then there's a couple of smaller pieces in one section. Not all of it is that way.
Right. So what we would probably do is just go in and patch that. Now, what Dennis and his guys are working on is what we call a hot box. And what that will improve pothole patching for us, because generally when we do pothole patching, we use what's called cold mix. And you can buy cold mix at Lowe's in the bags, and you dump it out and try to roll it and everything. And cold mix is the same thing. It's just asphalt that's not hot like it comes off a machine, right?
Right. I know what hot mix is.
Okay. Well, this hot box will take that, take the millings that when we mill a street off, we hang on to the millings. We can put the millings in that box and heat it up, and that'll turn it back into hot mix asphalt.
I want you to know, I'm not complaining.
No.
I just
no.
want to see how that rating works.
Right.
And I appreciate this update. And I think we've done fairly well with our sidewalks. I'm glad to see that we're getting them level, because I know downtown it was really bad, and
Yeah.
that's been improved quite immensely. And I know you spent a lot of time updating this, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
David?
Steve, the map we got on the sidewalks, why is there nothing here north of Sherry Whitlock or south of Jefferson?
And on the street map? Oh, that one.
Sidewalk map.
Let me go back to that.
I was looking like for a second page or something, and it's just a very concentrated area, but it does not go even down to 412.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was saying. This was just an example of how this company does the sidewalk surveys. This was one of the phases that we did, and I don't remember what year this was now, but we went from Jefferson up to Sherry Whitlock, and then from Holly, I believe it was, over to, what was it, Washington?
ICO, it looks like.
Ico. So
So they just did that area?
Yeah,
They
this-
didn't do the rest of the city?
Right, there are other maps every year that they come out when they survey. So, I mean, if you were to take everything collectively from Sherry Whitlock all the way down to 412, it'd just be dotted everywhere, but
Okay.
I just wanted to use this as an example.
This is the most recent thing that they did. And then this company, how are they chosen?
They're chosen by, we put out 3 quotes or put out a request for quotes. Their number generally comes in, well, all of them come in less than 50,000, so it doesn't require us to go out for bid, but we get 3 quotes.
The other thing on the recent project, on the street project you were talking about on Holly Street, that was when we got the big RDOT grant.
Right.
How was that company chosen? Did the state do it or did we do it?
Yeah, that was all RDOT.
Okay, I didn't know if we had, if they'd given the money and we hired the company or if they did it. Okay. It looks great, but you know, I'm interested in who the company is just because I wasn't that impressed, just because when you drive down it, you still feel an unevenness I mean, it's not as smooth as a brand new road should be, and I thought that's what it was. I know it's an overlay, right?
Right.
But I would have thought that they mill it before they overlaid it.
Yeah, they did mill it.
I feel everything that I did before when I drove it, and so that's why I'm like, you know, what's the name of the company?
APAC.
Oh, it's APAC, Arkansas. I was just surprised. It looks great and it's very smooth, but I still feel every terrain change. So, just curious.
Yes, Brad.
Hey, Steve, so let's talk living documents. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. And this affects Ward 2 and I believe Marlowe's Ward 3, specifically East Main, as you're coming in through the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Coming in off 412. East Main to Lincoln. I would encourage us to look at that in the very near future and to extend that turn lane all the way down to the stoplight at Lincoln. And at the alternative school, we also need to put in a crosswalk for the kids there to connect to that. There's 2 easy ways to do it. Add a couple of feet to the road, or curb and gutter, which obviously, you know, that's a little bit more extensive, but I think as a living document, somewhere in there, that's an in-house, and I don't know what that looks like for you, you know, 22, 23, but that gets a ton of traffic, and without that turn lane extended, it just get plugged up, and nobody likes that intersection for whatever reason. I think the lights just like to mess with my truck, maybe other people's cars, but
You're not
anyway,
alone.
that's a kind of a gateway easy fix, in my observation. It's been brought up to me several times. I'm sure Marla's heard some flack on it. If not, I've encouraged them to, you know, get over her way. And then second, and you know, just looking way down the road, for some reason that mic works really well over there. Is it echoing or is it just me? And I don't know if it's a 23, 24, but there's a real potential in Ward 2 for an industry to a major investment in our town. And I'm sure here in the near future, we're probably as a board, I hope get together, do a workshop, or I'll request one. And that may make us relook at Tahlequah Street. I think Tahlequah Street is another one, and with this potential expansion and with some additional money backing, we might be able to realign Tahlequah Street, and we are going to have to address the other end of Hyco, where we're tying in by the bridge where the connectivity piece is going across, and taking that all the way to East Main as a real potential. That may come up. And so when we talk about living document, You know, I wouldn't say I'm willing to sacrifice, but when it comes to it, you know, I look at Ward 2 because as a board collectively, we decided every ward would get projects.
Right.
But sometimes the engine that drives those projects, when they're willing to make a significant investment, we may have to wait a year or two on those, but it could very well accelerate those projects with the additional revenues coming in. So I just want you to be aware of that on the radar, you know, as a living document. I applaud, because I think most of us on the board, when we did this work, and I like reviewing it every 3 years, but there's a real potential that we may have to come up, and Director Allen mentioned it before. We can't do it every year because you got to get projects done.
Right.
But there's a real potential with our growth that we may have to do some serious conversations.
I agree. In fact, Tahlequah, are you talking about the intersection of Hico and Tahlequah? Because we've discussed that in-house several times about realigning that and trying to get that thing to work.
I think there's some things in work, so let's see how they shake out, but just be aware, a living document, that may come back up. And
We may have to breathe into that, huh?
I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll decide when that arises.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, and
ahead.
just let me make
Mhm.
this comment. We are about 10 minutes away from being out of time and
Okay.
ready for our board. So, Mindy.
I do appreciate the comment about the living document. I do hope that we can do as much as we can of what's planned, just because we do share this information. This is public information, so it's good for us to be able to follow through with what we're saying we want to do, understanding also that there may be circumstances that would cause other projects to take precedence. Couple of specific questions about the plans. The Sager Creek Drive that you mentioned, and I did notice that was in the red, and I noticed that those off streets, Mockingbird, Whippoorwill, the bird streets,
Yes.
those are in pretty bad repair. Will they be part of that Sager Creek Drive project, or?
It depends. Right now, I'm trying to not get into residential streets
Okay,
and just focus on collectors,
okay.
because once we get into residential streets, that'll never end.
I know there was a decent repair done on one of them,
Yeah.
about that middle street,
Yeah.
right at the curve, but that curve there is just really bad too.
And,
It's sort of in the middle between Hico and Lincoln.
and some of those side streets have potential, like the one we did. It was
Okay.
it was a stretch where we replaced the concrete, and the rest of the street, well, not the rest, but a good chunk of that street now is in pretty decent shape.
Just down from where that repair is, talk about chunks. It's just chunks of road, but I appreciate that that's on there. Let's see. And then one street that I didn't see on here that I think we've talked about is Kenwood from 16 to Bruce Rutherford.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was on my notes here to talk about. That was one of those where when I was putting this together initially, before I put it into a presentation, I've got a spreadsheet that has all these on there, and I had off to the side on, I don't remember if it was 20, I think it was 23, because 24, by that time those developments will be well along, but that was off to the side saying possibly replaced with Kenwood from Highway 16 to Bruce Rutherford. Now, that's
And-
also one that's on that list too.
It was on a list, and I didn't see it on this list. That's one
No.
of the reasons why I had the question. And I do know that the developers are helping with some road improvements out there. So I understand that it may take some time to figure out, what they're doing, to know what we have to do. But I just want to make sure it's on the radar still.
We've already patched a section over there.
Madam Mayor?
Okay, thank you.
Moment. Do either of you all have anything? No? Okay. David, very quickly.
I had meant to mention, I see Villa View overlay, but I thought at one time we had talked about widening the street because of the amount of traffic that's going down to the JVU biking thing now. And I had thought I'd heard people say we need to widen it. It is a very narrow street, and also sidewalk is what I had heard. So I would think that, I mean, I'm not trying to discount out to the city limits.
Right.
It's just not as much use from the bottom of the hill to the city limit as there is from Dogwood to the JBU biking trail.
Right. In fact, in-house, that's being designed, and I forget how many feet. It was just maybe 3 feet added to it, and then have curb and gutter on one side, and then the side path that will go from Dogwood all the way to the
Right.
to the
So
head.
you're looking at it. That's
Yes.
what I need to,
Yep.
okay.
Madam
All right,
Mayor,
And then, Madam Mayor, I was just gonna encourage the board members to actually go drive the streets. I've driven the streets in the proposed street project list that we got a few weeks ago, and I would encourage the board to do the same on this and the other list.
Thank you, David. And Mindy?
I was just going to
Reed-
comment on something that Director Allen said
Okay,
about village.
just
go
a
ahead.
minute, because Reed hasn't had
sure,
an
yeah.
opportunity and he would like to. So Reed.
Steve, I want to give a big thanks to you guys. We've talked about the future and what's happening right now, but we haven't talked much about where we've come from. And I think a big word that you have is up on the board right now in proactive. And to take a department such as yours from a reactive department, stop that, get the ball rolling, and turn it into a proactive, that takes a lot of work. And I commend everyone that's been a part of that, because that's unsung hero stuff. We can say, yeah, we're proactive now, but where have we come from? And I appreciate that and give kudos to those who are part of it.
Yeah, there's 2 in this room on either side, so
Yeah.
that are helping me
Dennis.
out here.
Thank you, Reed. Mindy?
And I echo that. And I was just going to mention something to Director Allen, actually. I was in contact with several of the people along Villaview that were wanting some improvements there because of the things that he mentioned. And they did seem happy with the plans to do the side path, fix the road. It sounds like we're going to add a couple of feet to it, but I understood that it wasn't going to be, a major widening of the road, but that side path was really going to be helpful because of the pedestrians and the cyclists that go up and down that road. So
Yep.
just that the neighbors seemed happy with that.
That's what we want, happy neighbors, right?
Thank you. Thank you, Mindy. And thank you all, directors. Steve, thank you very much for your update.
Thank you.
We look forward to the next one.
Okay, good.
And with that, this workshop is adjourned. Call to order this Siloam Springs Board of Directors meeting for September 7th, 2021. Roll call.
Here.
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 If you all will, please stand with me as Director Reed Carroll leads us in prayer and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, tonight we give thanks for an opportunity to come into your presence to be a part of the work that you've called us to do. Siloam Springs, for the amenities that you've given to us, the opportunity we have to be a blessing to our neighbor, to those around us. And tonight we can use wisdom, we can use common sense in doing the work that you've called us to, and we can be grateful for this community we live in and the people we are surrounded by. In this we give thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I would ask that anyone that has an electronic device would either silence that or turn it off, please. And thank you for that. First item is the Certificate of Appreciation for Mr. Lonnie Collins. And Director Rissler. Lisa, thank you for that recognition of what Lonnie did for your family. And Lonnie, we appreciate you and your service to this city. The next is our utility rate study final report, the 1898 company.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Board of Directors. It's my pleasure to be with you tonight. My name is Dave Nauman. I'm with 1898 and Company, a part of Burns & McDonnell, and I'm here simply to deliver our final report to you. I've got a few comments to make as we deliver that report, and shouldn't take too long, but we'll hit the highlights. The first thing I wanted to just point out is the process we followed. When we met with you earlier in this process, we talked about three primary phases. The first phase being financial planning, the second phase being cost of service analysis, and the third phase being rate design, or how you price your services. We met with you, I've got a typo on this slide, we met in June to review the financial plan, really the end of phase one, and that's where we talked about the type of increases we saw your four utilities needing, and how that compared to your current policy of CPI-based increases. We met in May for that, and we met again in June to discuss the proposed rates. We had some options for you to consider with the structure of some of your services. The report that you have, I've just given you the high-level overview of it. It has an executive summary that describes the process and the recommendations that were made. The introduction will give you some perspective on what we see industry-wide on rate increases and how that compares to your current policy. And then there's a section for each utility. So you'll see a detailed assessment of the water and the wastewater and the electric and solid waste utilities and that analysis, and then a summary of recommendations at the very end. In that summary of recommendations, we have summarized here on this slide really the priority adjustments or changes that we recommend. One is to meet future funding needs. We do anticipate the need to increase rates. However, compared to your current policy of doing an automatic CPI-based adjustment, we do think your water and electric and sewer utilities can do less than that, that the ordinary policy of CPI-based adjustments is really more than is needed for those three utilities. On the sanitation utility, we do see a need to increase rates higher than CPI, but not dramatically so, and it meets critical funding needs. And I think the point here, and I'll have a slide here in just a few moments, that shows the net result of all of those changes on your average residential bill will be lower than they would otherwise experienced under the inflation-based ordinance. The last three recommendations here are really about pricing structure and how you price your services. One is that we recommend freezing that residential and commercial all-electric discount rate. And by that we mean just not adding additional customers to that rate. From a cost to service standpoint, your cost of power isn't any less in the off-season. And so there's really not a cost basis justification for that, which is where that recommendation is coming from. We recommend consolidating in the electric utility your large and small power classes because the service provided there is really the same. And then the last recommendation is we presented to you some alternate water and sewer structures where you've got a fixed fee rather than a minimum bill, and that fixed fee increases by meter size. That's an optional structure you may consider implementing in the future. And I mentioned the anticipated outcomes or what we see as a result of these adjustments. First is we anticipate lower rate increases than you otherwise would have done. So CPI-based increases aren't necessary for your water, sewer, and electric utilities. And because of that, and because we know that the industry itself is raising rates higher than CPI, we expect your competitiveness or how your rates compare to your regional peers will improve over time. And this plan will give you adequate funding. So we'll talk about risks here in just a minute. But assuming kind of a business as usual environment, you'll be able to implement the necessary capital improvement projects that have been highlighted in the plan. The graph represents to the right, the bars are the total bills for a residential customer, a frequent or a typical residential customer. So in today's rates, the monthly bill is about $199 for all four services. The blue bars represent where we see those bills going as a result of our recommendations compared to the dots, which would be more of the CPI-based ordinance. And so in 2022, it's about $1.50 in savings compared to what we would anticipate you would do under a CPI-based approach. And by 2026, it's $7 to $8 of difference in monthly bill. And so that's the combined effect of doing something lower on water, sewer, and electric, and then slightly higher on sanitation. The risks to the plan are really just our unknowns. We are going through a period of high inflation. It's difficult to say how long that lasts. If it is a sustained inflationary period, then some of the assumptions around project costs may need to be revisited, and that might cause the plan to get recalibrated a little bit. Unplanned capital projects, so we all know, and Steve was mentioning it here earlier on the streets, sometimes things come up you didn't plan for. And to that extent, you may need to adjust the plan as well. And then just general economic disruption. We've been in a pretty sustained growth stretch for our economy, despite COVID, for a lot of communities. And so a major change like the Great Recession that we went through in 2007 or 8, of course, changes things too. From a practical standpoint, we look at the plan as being a roadmap, and your city leaders, Philip and Christina and Steve and the team, will evaluate the needs annually as part of your budgeting process, and the plan will be recalibrated as need be. And so that's really all I had for prepared comments. I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Directors, any questions at this time? Yes.
Thank you for your time and effort.
Thank you, sir.
Philip, is there anything at this time? No.
Thank you.
All right. We thank you very much for your time and your information.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. The next item on our agenda is public input. The public may address the Board of Directors regarding any item on the consent agenda or any city business not listed on the board's regular agenda. So at this time, if you would like to come forward, I need, if you will, please state your name and address into the mic so that our city clerk can make sure she has that. And then after you have given that, you will have 3 minutes.
My name is Rosa Robinson. I'm from Fayetteville, Arkansas. My address is 2455 Weddington Drive in Fayetteville.
Thank you.
I'm requesting to address the issue of the Siloam Springs Kayak Park. First of all, my family's been in Fayetteville since about 1929. We've had a ranch there for 75 years, which is now inside the middle of the city. So I'm saying that I didn't move here 5 or 10 years ago. I've seen a lot of growth in all of Northwest Arkansas. I also lived for 25 years, 1 block from Dixon Street and the University of Arkansas. So I know all about the traffic for Razorback games and the mess for Bikes, Blues, and Barbecue since it began. But nothing could have prepared me for the chaos that I saw at the kayak park yesterday. I am a whitewater kayaker, and I've been to the kayak park every week since May. We put in on the river yesterday at 9 o'clock. I didn't see anything unusual. I spent 6 hours on the river. The people were delightful. Many, many people. Children playing, little kids walking in the creek. Everyone for the 4 miles was perfectly behaved. It was delightful. Everything was wonderful. It was so good we turned a 2-hour float into 6 hours. 6 hours. When it was over, I had to go back and retrieve my truck out of the parking lot. And it was the worst chaotic, insane disaster mess I've ever seen in my life. There were cars parked all along the paved road, stuck in every nook and cranny between the no parking signs, underneath all the threatening signs of what was going to happen to these people. There was a tow truck taking away a car. I've heard from the canoe meetings that the plan for the kayak park is to just tow their cars, but there's not that many tow trucks to tow away 100 cars a day. Someone mentioned that the park had outgrown its fundamental design, but all of Northwest Arkansas has outgrown its fundamental design. Just look at XNA, look at I-49. Everything used to be 2-lane streets, and now it's all 4-lane. We used to have cow pastures, and now it's all subdivisions. My point is we've got to readdress this and do something about this. These people should not be criminalized for wanting to take their families to the river to have a tailgate party. They bring their own tent, canopy, their own table, their own chairs, their own gas grill. They bring the babies. They bring their grandma. All they want is access to the river.
Yeah.
The Gully Park in Fayetteville has a huge field that they open up for extra overflow parking, and the Botanical Gardens and Gully Park. And there's no pavement, there's no gravel, there's no lines, the people just do it beautifully and take care of themselves.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but your time is up. If
Okay.
you'll wind it up very quickly.
Yes, I would appreciate if you could re-look at that. I heard that you have 57 miles of sidewalks and hazards, and to be proactive and improve the condition at the kayak park. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir. If you state your name and address,
Blake
and then your
Jones.
3 minutes will begin after that.
Blake Jones, and as you know, my address will remain with me.
Excuse me, could
I'm
you
sorry,
please
your
speak
your
up?
name again?
Blake Jones, and my address I'm going to keep for myself.
Thank you.
In the mic.
Sure, is this better? So I'd just like to address the board because, as I said last month, I gave you 30 days before I commenced a suit against the city and the entire board. And I'm going to name you individually. I'm going to name the officers that were also culpable in the things that they did, violating our rights and stopping us without warrant, without probable cause. I still haven't seen any measures. I've seen the chief of police is here tonight. I don't see that the board has worked on anything, quite frankly, including the noise ordinance that I asked over a year ago, which is a simple procedure, but even that seems to be too much for the board to handle. Noise ordinance itself is very vague, and it's one of those things that there's no decibel reading here. There's no equipment to read decibels, and it's one of those things where it's interpretative on who and it's subjective on all times of day. If someone feels annoyed that they can be arrested for this and have summons issued, which is what was done to me and which began all this process. That very same ordinance has been worded the same way in 7 other states around us and has been declared unconstitutional. But yet, even addressing that, it still remains that the people of this city are silenced from morning until night. Because even though that there's a curfew from 10 o'clock or 11 till 7 in the morning, at any time of the day, somebody can simply say that they don't like me starting my motorcycle, or they don't like me playing my music. But it's okay to play the Christian bells, and I can hear them across town. And even though I'm a Christian, it's just the point of the matter that you can't determine one thing is wrong when you allow something else. And that's the very reason that I approach that. And going forward, I've addressed issues for the FOIA requests that I've asked for the department. They've been non-responsive even to this day. Just a couple years ago, they didn't even have the software capable to redact a video and give me that information, which they were required to do since '01. And I have those emails that they sent to me when I asked for those, and they were telling me that they couldn't give me that information. And they were in violation 17 years. And again, the police department is not subject to anyone here. No one holds them in regard or to any standard. No one holds the laws that we have unless they're paying the coffers of the city. Then, of course, we ignore and we oppress the poor people of the city. But I'm not one of those, and the time is almost up. So I would just want to remind you for the board to make a decision to do something. And if they don't, as I said, we can resolve the matters in federal court. You guys have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir. Please speak into the mic and give us your name and address.
My name is Sam Heinrich. I live at 10004 David Court, Siloam Springs.
Thank you.
Yeah, my friend and I came tonight because there was a notice on the property on Airport Road and 412 regarding annexation and zoning, with the indication there'd be a public hearing tonight. So I do know Mrs. Hunt, and So I believe that there may be a different date that hearing is to be established. And I guess I'm just looking for clarification as to when a hearing might be scheduled and the process, the status on that.
Philip, do you know?
My understanding is, and Ben could correct me if I'm wrong, the applicant, I believe, withdrew their application and they will resubmit it at a later date. And
Okay.
until that resubmittal happens, I can't give you, we would have to schedule another hearing after that resubmittal.
Okay.
Ben, is that generally, he's gonna tell me I'm wrong, so.
Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. Yeah, we do have an active application. It was not withdrawn. What's happened is the applicant is choosing to turn in a preliminary plat application first before the annexation is considered. So that preliminary plat and annexation will go before the board on October 5th or whatever that first board meeting of October.
So Ben, will the applicant send out, I mean, we have to put notices on the property and a notice in the paper. Has that notice been done?
I'd have to check with a permit technician, but they would need a redo notice for that correct date. Yeah.
As I told you, he would tell me I'm wrong, and so I'm wrong on that. I knew they had done something that would change the date.
Yes.
So
actually, I'm wrong too. I wasn't prepared to speak to this. It was actually the November meeting that it will be going before, because it has to go to the Planning Commission first, and then
So there will be a public hearing before the Planning Commission
for the preliminary plat.
in October.
Yes.
Do you have the date of that?
I believe it's the 14th. I'm not 100% on
So
that.
you'd be happy to call us if you'd like and confirm, but public hearing before the Planning Commission, October 14th, we think, and then a public hearing here.
And November 2nd, I think, is
Second Tuesday.
October 12th.
October 12th. Sorry, I don't have a calendar in front of me. So, but yes, so it would be the Planning Commission will be looking at just the preliminary plat, and then what will happen is when the preliminary plat goes before the board, before you guys, we will also in conjunction have the annexation ordinance at that same meeting, so that they can be considered together.
Probably on the 2nd.
Yeah, I believe that was in November, the first Tuesday of November. Yeah.
So this gentleman, if he wants to address the preliminary plat, would need to be at the Planning and Zoning Commission
Yes.
meeting. So
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
thank you, Ben.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd say is you might want to remove that sign in the meantime until you're more clear on the dates. There's a lot of folks out there in that neighborhood of Stonecrest who are concerned or interested in the outcome of that property. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? If not, we will move on to our consent agenda. Item A, workshop minutes, August 17th, 2021. Item B, regular meeting minutes, August 17, 2021. Item C, resolution 41-21, special use development permit, short-term rental, Rex and Amy Harris, 111 West Tahlequah Street. Item D, resolution 42-21, special use development permit, short-term rental, Ram Vision, 400 East Twin Springs Street, apartments number 1 and 2. Item E, resolution 43-21, special use development permit, short-term rental, Douglas and Elizabeth Oosterman, 205 Greenwood Place. Item F, resolution 44-21, setting hearing date for right-of-way vacation, 613 East University Street. Item G, resolution 45-21, preliminary plat development permit, Somerset Edition, Phase 2, 3200 block of East Kenwood Street. That is the consent agenda. Directors, what is your pleasure? Yes.
No one that is pulling any items. I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda as presented. Roll call.
Smiley?
Me? Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Excuse me, Allen?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Sappington?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Next item is our regularly scheduled items, ordinances. H, Ordinance 21-16 for its third reading, amending Section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from R2 and R3 to R4, 610 West Tahlequah Street. Ben?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. Ben Rhodes, Senior Planner. So yes, before you is the third reading and the final reading for the rezoning. This is at 610 West Tahlequah Street, going from R2 and R3 to R4 multifamily. And staff still has not received any public comments since the last reading, and we remain recommending this for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to address Ordinance 21-16? There being none, directors? If not, do I have a motion to place Ordinance 21-16 on its third and final reading, reading by title only, suspending the rules?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Burns?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Sappington?
Yes.
Smiley?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 21-16, an ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code, City Zoning Map, rezoning from R2 and R3 to R4, the property located at 610 West Tahlequah Street.
Thank you. At this time, do I have a motion to adopt Ordinance 21-16?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Sappington?
Yes.
Smiley?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Motion to adopt is approved. Next is I, Ordinance 21-17, third reading, amending City Municipal Code, Chapter 102, Zoning, and Chapter 82, Sanitation, Private Drives. Ben?
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor and Board. Before you is the third and final reading of the ordinance that, as the Mayor stated, is updating the zoning code and sanitation code with respect to the use of private drives in the PD zone district. Staff and the Planning Commission have recommended approval, and we are available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address Ordinance 21-17? There being none, directors? If not, do I have a motion to place Ordinance 21-17 on its third and final reading, suspending the rules and reading by title only?
So
So-
moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Rissler?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Sappington?
Yes.
Smiley?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 21-17, an ordinance amending Chapter 82 Sanitation and Chapter 102 Zoning of the Municipal Code with respect to private drives and requirements for collection of commercial refuse containers.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt Ordinance 21-17?
So moved.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second to adopt. Roll call.
Allen?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Sappington?
Yes.
Smiley?
Yes.
Burns?
Yes.
Hunt?
Yes.
Rissler?
Yes. Motion to adopt is approved. Item J, Ordinance 21-18, third reading, amending City Municipal Code, Chapter 102 Zoning, Body Art. Ben?
Yes, thank you again, Madam Mayor and Board. So for your final ordinance this evening, you're considering the third reading of an update to Use Unit 22. And this is with respect to body art businesses that are allowed these uses by right in the I2 zone and also special use in the C2 zone. Staff and the Planning Commission continue to recommend approval of this, and we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address Ordinance 21-18? There is not. Directors? There being no discussion, does anyone have a motion to place Ordinance 21-18 on its third and final reading, suspending the rules and reading title only?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
No.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 21-18, an ordinance amending Chapter 102 zoning code of the Municipal Code with respect to Use Unit 22 for body modification businesses.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt Ordinance 21-18?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Sappington,
Yes.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
No.
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Ordinance 21-18 is adopted. Next is item K, Ordinance 21-19. First reading, amending Section 102-21 of the City Municipal Code, rezoning from A1 to C2, 4171 Highway 412 East. Ben?
One moment. There we are. Yes, I actually misspoke. This is the last ordinance of the evening, not the previous one. So again, thank you, Madam Mayor and Board. So this is a new ordinance. We're looking at a rezoning. This is at 4171 Highway 412 East. This request is to go from A1 to C2 roadway commercial. And as you can see on the map here, this is located just to the west of the Arkansas Highway 59 and 412 intersection, basically in that open field there on the far last parcel of that field. Here you see the site plan as indicated on the map here. The area we are considering is just one that's highlighted in the red. That's a remainder piece that's zoned A1. The rest of this area is already zoned C2. The new Atwoods is going up right north of here, just for orientation. With any rezoning, of course, we're looking at the future land use map. The red shading is what you want to look at for a commercial zone. So this is compliant with the guidance of the map. And here is the site view. It's basically this little section right here in the end that's being rezoned. Staff and the Planning Commission looked at this, and we're recommending approval and have no needed conditions. And we are available for any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address Ordinance 21-19? There being none, directors?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'm just happy that we tied that last piece in, and I think that corner, we're about to get our minds blown going into 3 Mile Lane. That's what's happening, isn't it, Ben? It's going to change dramatically, that corner there. And the only thing I would ask is we go forward, and it's the same thing that happened at Ward 3 when we did some rezoning over there, is that we start to bump traffic as they develop that close to that intersection. And they'll need some consideration for that, but I'm excited about the commercial zoning. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Brad. Anyone else? If not, do I have a motion to place Ordinance 21-19 on its first reading, suspending the rules and reading title only?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Smiley,
Yes.
Burns,
Yes?
Hunt,
Yes.
Rissler,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Sappington.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Philip?
Ordinance number 21-19, an ordinance amending section 102-21 of the Siloam Springs Municipal Code, City Zoning Map, rezoning from A1 to C2, property located at 4171 Highway 412 East.
Thank you. Next, items, staff reports. First item is L, Noise Ordinance Review. Chief Garrett.
Hello, Board. Alan Gilbert, Chief Police, Siloam Springs Police Department. I was directed by Mr. Patterson and asked to review the city ordinance for noise. My staff and I reviewed the ordinance. We find it to be sound and constitutional. It is in our opinion that we do some small modifications and add to the ordinance. The ordinance also has been reviewed by our city attorney, and we've also consulted our city judge. They both find it to be constitutional. In my error on the memo that Mr. Patterson has sent you, I had crossed out unreasonably. I just misinterpreted some case law and the city attorney. I just read something wrong. So please strike that. That definitely needs to be in there, and that's my error. One of the under the section, I would like to reword. We'll keep unreasonably, and then right after unnecessary, I'd like to put plainly audible. That just gives the officers a little more discretion and common sense of what plainly audible is, and with anything from a siren to a whistle to dogs barking, different things like that. I would like to add that. Also, in the next section, I would like where it's underlined, which produces and reproduces and amplifies sound. I just think that needs to be in there. Also, from 150 feet, I would like to cut that to 75 feet. The houses are a little bit closer, and the officer, with the sound, that I just think that'll give us a little more clarity to cut that in half. I also have reviewed a lot of different noise ordinances in the state and other states. So we're kind of cutting those feet down. The other addition I'd like to make is put the definition of what plainly audible is. One of the sections on the permit section, the permit, what I'd like to do there is update it. It's kind of vague. And in my opinion, we need to make that section clear. It doesn't give clear information on the fees and the process, the application process. AML has also reviewed our noise ordinance and found it to be constitutional. On January 25th, 2020, Garcia versus State, Rogers, Arkansas noise ordinance, which mirrors our ordinance closely, was challenged and ended up in Arkansas Courts of Appeals. The Arkansas Court of Appeals upheld the ordinance to be constitutional and lawful. I will proceed with the review at the board's discretion. Any
Thank
questions?
you, Chief.
Madam Mayor?
Board? Yes, David.
Chief, why don't we have a decibel max level? Do any other cities have a maximum?
They
decibel?
do. Decimal readers are just something I'd like to do in the future. We didn't have them when I got here. The noise ordinance, again, we've had 603 calls of service in 3 years. We have wrote one ticket in the 3-year period with no warrants issued in 3-year period. So again, when you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at everything I'm doing, there's not an issue that we're having. It's just very vague. So again, I think our ordinance is very strong. I just think it needs some updating and tweaking, and that's something I could work with the city attorney on.
I agree.
But no, sir, I do not.
I agree that it's constitutional and everything, it's been checked by everybody. I just didn't know if other cities had it, and if you asked any of them why they added a decibel max level.
I have not, but I will be happy to look into that.
Director Allen,
yes,
if
sir.
I may, I used to work with a city that had a decibel provision in their noise ordinance, and it was very difficult to enforce because of background noise. If you had someone creating a unreasonable noise, but you had like 412 in the background, every time a tractor trailer rig went by, the decibel level meter shot up, and it was very difficult to quiet all of the background noise so that you could focus and have the decibel reader just read the noise that was in question. And we eventually, in working with our city attorney at the time and the police and the courts, we eventually removed that decibel level because the inability to end up in court and to say that reading was only that noise that was in question, and there was no background noise. It was very difficult to be able to honestly make that a statement in court.
Gotcha.
Mayor?
I'm not done.
I wanted to just tell you something about that with Fayetteville. They found it very difficult, and I'm not trying to step on your toes, but they have a they had a decibel reading, and they were finding it very difficult to use that and defend it because of the same situation that Administrator Patterson is, especially down on Dixon Street.
Right, Mr. Patterson's correct. You know, the ones that I've used when I first started, they've come a long way, but we stopped using them where I came from just because of the background, the trucks. It's hard to pinpoint that that's that car. By the time you pull it out as a vehicle or anything drives by, so much background noise, they're hard to use, so we ended up putting them away. But again, I'd be happy to look into it to see if there's any new models and if anybody's having any success with them.
And then the other question I had, Chief, on the actual Chapter 66, Article 9, noise, number 3, it says yelling, shouting, hooting, and whistling. What is hooting? Is that like hooty hoo? I just thought it was an odd
That's
word.
where that plainly audible, and that's some tweaking in some words that we need to clear.
I thought that was funny.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, David, is that?
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Sorry.
Brad?
Oh, I might get called in by neighbors on the hooting part. I yell at a new dog I own. I'm not very kind. I just told him myself. I'll tell you the biggest complaint that I have in my neighborhood, and I'm just talking right here in the historical district.
Madam Mayor, can you ask Brad to pull the mic up?
Yes, Brad,
Hallelujah.
if
I
you'll
look
speak
forward to
louder,
that.
please. Thank you.
Ooh. See, I've worked hard on being quiet. Now I need to
Be louder.
speak normal. It's predominantly my older neighbors, but we've got, those car movies out there. I don't want to say them because I don't want to promote the movies, but I think you know what they are. And we have some nice vehicles in town, and they've driven by these board meetings before, and they've got a great exhaust system in them and an airflow system, and so that's one of their complaints. They live next to them, and when they start their vehicles in the morning, they like to rev the engine, and it's a change in the neighborhood. When you live in the historical district, we're even slower than the subdivisions outside of town. That's one. And probably 4 or 5 years ago, I had some music playing 2 in the morning. Officers came over, asked the folks to turn the music down. We've never, just like you stated, there's never been a overstep. It's always met with, it's a courteous thing. The same thing I told the officer, dispatch when I called them non-emergency. I love my neighbors. I'm just trying to go to bed. And so I think you've done a really good job at that. And there's a lot steeper challenges out there for the PD that you're addressing. And I thank you for reviewing that noise ordinance, but I will always get complaints on loud vehicles but from certain individuals in my ward, and that's just an age difference, it's a cultural thing, and it's just the way it's going to be.
Yes, sir. We have people working nights, and that's when I say, you've had 603 calls to service, and a large part of that is during fireworks time. But most of the time, the officers respond to these calls. Our citizens cooperate, and they turn it down. Usually they get the warning, if we got to come back, they can get a citation, and we explain that to them. But we have, the citizens here have cooperated, and that's why you see such a low ticket total, 1 in 3 years.
Brad, what you're talking about is the kind of thing that it's like those exhausts, what's the point? You're, you know, the people in the historic district who want to sleep in can't very well do it when you've got somebody trying to show off with their exhaust pipe, so.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I
Carol.
just want to thank you for updating this. I think we had somebody here address us about the noise ordinance, and I'm glad to see this, and you feel comfortable in defending this. Is that correct?
I'd be happy to review anything that's asked of me.
I think it's good. In my neighborhood, it's pretty quiet, except we do have some motorcycles that sometimes rev up, but they're just wanting to ride their motorcycles, so.
Yeah. My wife yells at me every once in a while. I'm not sure that's a noise ordinance,
Oh.
but I may complain.
I've probably been accused of
She
that
better not be
myself.
listening. I'll be in trouble when I get home.
You will, Chief.
Anything else?
Lisa?
I'm gonna go test the hooting.
Thank you for looking into this.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm the director that asked that we looked into and asked that we consider what the judge has to say and we consider what the city attorney had to say, and I appreciate you checking into that. I think when a citizen comes to us, especially an angry citizen, it's only our due diligence to look into it, and I appreciate that you did look into it. I did, after reading it, and I'll admit, I didn't read it the first time he asked. I disregarded it, I guess. Not on purpose, I just did. But now looking at it, I did question about the decimal readings, and I also questioned the unreasonable, sorry, I did not bring my glasses, but what is the measurement? Is it based on interpretation only? I mean, like, if Marla doesn't like me, can she just keep calling on me? And when do you guys say, okay, this is enough?
That's why a lot of cities, and Jay might have wanted to jump in on that one, where we need that word unreasonably. We need that common language of plainly audible. I mean, just because you can't sleep and the dog's barking, or, I mean, it's got to be excessive noise, and that's to the officer's discretion. But usually if we ask them to turn it down, they do that.
We have great citizens here. I also
You
put
want
a-
to answer on that, Jay?
Yeah, is that working? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things the courts have said pretty consistently is that a noise ordinance is acceptable if it's only going to penalize conduct that would be offensive to a reasonable person, and it's going to come down to a judge ultimately would determine what a reasonable person would find offensive. But that's what our ordinance does. I mean, it only penalizes conduct if it's unreasonably loud, or if it's or if it's unreasonably annoying, or whatever. So we're covered there. It's not just someone who's just exceptionally sensitive to noise, or just has some exceptional circumstance that they just can't tolerate somebody because they don't like them, anything like that. That's not going to fly. So we're good there. Like as Chief alluded to, I mean, there are a few other tweaks that we would like to make, and cleaning up some of that language about the hooting and whistling and so forth, and it talks about jukeboxes, and loud jukeboxes probably aren't a real threat to Siloam Springs in 2021. There's things like that. So definitely there are things we can do.
I think Hootie and the Blowfish.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That's date.
Yeah. So, and the other thing I just wanted to mention, I guess while I have the floor, is you may want to, this did come up some time ago, and so you may wonder, well, why haven't we done something before now? We looked at it and determined that what we had was constitutional, and the Municipal League confirmed that, and You probably heard of a case that came down a couple of years ago from the Supreme Court called Gilbert. It was Gilbert, Arizona case. It was a sign ordinance, but it has affected municipal regulation at every level in all kinds of ways, including regulation of noise. There have been a few cases that have kind of worked their way up to the system. There have been some indications that the Supreme Court has been going to take one of these and kind of render a decision that would either kind of affirm the where we are now as far as regulation or change it, but either way, add some clarification. And so kind of been waiting to see where that went. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, they haven't seen fit to take any of those cases, so we're still kind of in limbo. The thought was, well, why, change our ordinance and then just, have the Supreme Court rule and then have to come back and revisit it, if what we have is okay. If the board wants, these changes aren't that extensive, I can work with the chief. We can go ahead, bring those to the board. And, if the Supreme Court does something later on, we can certainly revisit it. So anyway, be happy to work with you guys and the chief and we'll get that done.
Okay. Madam Mayor.
Okay, Lisa,
Oh,
you
go
have
ahead.
another question?
Yeah, on here, it says that you can sign for an affidavit for a warrant for arrest. Am I missing where we can say it's kind of a step process, you can get a ticket, or that seems harsh for noise.
I spoke with the judge about that.
And I know it's constitutional, but I still think it sounds harsh.
Right. If we don't witness something and we go and it's an ongoing thing with the neighbor and we're not with, by the time we get there, they see us coming down the road and they turn it off or whatever's going on, their next step is to see the judge and get an affidavit. I've asked the judge, could we look at possibly doing a summons or some different things, but again, that's the court. So we'll work there. A lot of times the judge has to get enough evidence and probable cause to get that affidavit. So again, they got to be able to articulate what is going on and the judge signs off on that, which has no bearing on the police department. Once it's issued, we have to serve it. And most of the time in the one incident that we did not arrest the person. We just gave them a summons to appear in court off the warrant. So last resort is
an arrest on their record?
No.
It just seems, that wording just seems harsh for me.
Right. No one that I know of has been arrested from this. We give them a citation, they have to show up in court, even off the warrant.
And then my last note was just exactly what Brad said. How many times have we been sitting in this meeting and people that invest a lot of money in their cars and you can hear, and you can hear them drive by. And so, yeah, thank you for looking into it.
Any further questions?
Anyone else?
Yes.
Mindy?
Yes, I thought it might be helpful, maybe not, to give a little history. The citizen who has expressed a concern about the noise ordinance, who was here tonight, actually did reach out to me shortly after I started on the board. And so I was still even greener than I am now. We did, though, look into this, and I spent time with Mr. Patterson, with Jay, just about the issue, and it was determined at the time that as far as the noise ordinance was concerned, that it was constitutional. And I think you just confirmed the question that I had, which was basically just to remind me that that is what happened at the time. So what you're suggesting now, so any violation of the ordinance that may be brought up now in any kind of suit would reflect what the ordinance was at the time, but it was constitutional at the time. These changes now are just a few clarifications. But I don't think the right or the answers that were being sought were provided, but it is something that has been being worked on. So I wanted you all to know that. I do agree that when we have a citizen expressing a concern, we need to look into it. and it was being looked into, not maybe as publicly. So,
And can I say something on that?
Sure.
We as board of directors are not allowed to be speaking to each other, so we wouldn't know that
exactly.
Mindy was looking into it.
Yeah.
And
Thank you. both.
if I may add one more thing,
Sure.
I mean, since you know, the subject Mr. Jones was brought up, and that was explained to him at the time, and was also has been explained to him since, that this was reviewed not only by me but also by the Municipal League research staff, that they, you know, it's been thoroughly reviewed. It's been found to be, you know, constitutional based on Arkansas precedent. He simply did not like that answer, and so he persists in his opinion that it's unconstitutional, and he's obviously entitled to his opinion. And if he wishes to challenge, you know, bring a challenge in court, I mean, he has every right to do that. I'm just saying that based on my own research and what others have done, and our own municipal judge as well, I'm confident that we would prevail should such a case arise.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else? Thank you, Chief. We appreciate your time and your effort on this. Next is our Gateway Guardrail update. Justin?
Thank you, Justin Bland, City Engineer. Okay, so I think last time this was on the board agenda, the board made a request to RDOT to install a guardrail out at the Gateway Pond. And so just to kind of get us up to date here, RDOT was very responsive to respond to that request. They did look at the situation again. Unfortunately, they still maintain that the accident rate here didn't exceed the state average, so that it didn't warrant installing guardrail on the right of way. But upon further investigation, they found that there was a discrepancy in the right of way. And when I say discrepancy, it was just that it was never formally established through there when this portion of Main Street was given to the city. So they did establish that over the summer, and it's 19 foot off the stripe. So basically this line right here, kind of parallel to the roadway. And what that gives us is about 6 foot at the narrowest, which is about right here, to kind of do as we please. And then it kind of meanders away from there. So you can't really do anything on the other side of it, but we have at least 6 foot or more to do some type of improvement. So with the idea in mind that we spent time and effort out here to make some aesthetic improvements, we looked at some different options for the guardrail. One that I didn't really highlight as much in the report or the memo was that we could always use the standard galvanized guardrail, which is the one shown here on the left. It would have a lower cost. From what I've heard from the contractor, probably about 10 to 15% less than the Core 10 option. Staff's opinion, it wasn't aesthetic as some of the other options, so we didn't list it out there explicitly. The next option was the powder coated guardrail, which is the example shown in the middle. And the pro to this one is that there's a variety of colors you can use on this, but it is nearly twice as expensive as the other, the Core 10 option, so that's kind of the drawback to it. And then on the right is the Core 10, which is a kind of a weathered steel finish. The rusted surface kind of seals off the metal so it doesn't rust any further. It's what we use on all the pedestrian bridges across Hager Creek. And you see this a lot in national forest, parks, roadways, those types of things. So it's used extensively when you kind of want it to kind of disappear from the the view. So with that in mind, I'm gonna skip to right here. So as shown in the memo, we had 4 different options. The pink one, which is option 1, is just to put the guardrail about 5 foot off the pond wall. This proved to be problematic with contractors because the machine that they use, they actually has a machine that hammers these posts into the ground. They don't auger them out and then put them in and bury them. Well, there's not enough room to get it in there, so at first they said, well, they just bid the materials, and then they came back, and I think we have an option where our electric department can go in and auger the holes out for them, and have the contractor come back and install the handrail by hand, or the guardrail by hand. One thing I got just talking to different contractors on this, just wanted to mention is that this is a very unusual situation, having it at the toe of the slope. There is definitely a possibility of a vehicle hitting it at the right angle and speed, and the vehicle flipping over because the center of gravity is just higher than the guardrail. There are a lot of variables in that. I mean, the height of the vehicle, the speed, the angle. So it's just very difficult to predict. It would obviously be better if it was at the top of the slope, because that's where it's these things are to be designed to be. But we don't have that option in this scenario. Just for instance, I think we had the first accident that we had where a vehicle entered the pond. I think the guardrail actually would have probably prevented that from happening, because if I remember right, the truck kind of came in here, probably would have hit that and kind of meandered off to the side. The second one, though, it could have actually made that worse, because if I remember correctly, it came in and kind of went down that really steep slope at an angle. So I think there's definitely a possibility that could have actually flipped that vehicle and possibly landed upside down in the pond. So it's not a great solution here. I know we're trying to make it safer, but it's definitely a possibility of unforeseen consequences on that. So anyways, that's option one. Option two, which is shown in blue, for the purpose of this, is just the western and northern edge. And the exact location of this is up for discussion. I've shown it here between the sidewalk and the curb, and that's just for ease of installation, because I think we could get the contractor to use that machine to install it there because it's flat enough up top. And it also kind of gives them the most uninterrupted sections, or the longest uninterrupted sections of guardrail. We could move it behind the sidewalk, but I think there's going to have to be a couple changes here. The first being that we'd probably, if you can see here on this, so on the left side is kind of facing east down 412, and then the right's off the stoplight. If you put it behind the sidewalk, this portion back here in the distance, if you can see that, would probably have to have the electric department auger the holes, because again, behind the sidewalk, it really starts to drop off that slope. But then we could, easily come back around, and then we'd have to have a break in it here with the fountains for the pumps. So there would be maybe a 20-30 foot section there that would not be continuous through that area if we did it behind the sidewalk. So there's some pros and cons to which location we have there. And then the third option is just this last little piece to kind of connect it around the corner. There's some options here. I think, out in the field, we discussed that our welcome sign is actually kind of a decent shield here. So if a car did hit that, it's probably going to stop it. It's a very substantial block wall. So there's kind of like a shadow that you could kind of rely on if someone's coming around that corner. However, I said if it'd be easier just to have that connected all the way around the corner, that could be done as well. And then the last option, as far as the pricing goes, was just we realized that having this 5-foot area with a guardrail is not a safe place to mow. So we got quotes for landscaping behind the rail and in front of the wall, and then also included the steep slope section over here where we had an accident earlier this year. And what we're proposing for that is this Spicata liriope, if I remember how that was correct, or pronounced correctly, which is kind of, I think it's just basically this monkey grass. But we used it on the Mount Olive Street Diet project. And we just been done pretty well there. I think we just have to go and kind of weed eat it down maybe twice a year, but otherwise it's really low maintenance, so we wouldn't have to have mowers out there, on a weekly basis to do any maintenance out there. So those So the table in the memo, this is just directly out of that. It shows the breakdown of the cost for the different options. And as I mentioned earlier, if it was preferred to go with just the normal galvanized guardrail, it'd be probably 10 to 15% less than the Corten cost All these costs include the electric department drilling the holes for option number 1. If it's preferred to move the rail behind the sidewalk on option number 2, there would probably be more drilling required by the electric department, but we can work that out. And kind of the challenge of this right now is that the process still is very volatile, so we're only getting quotes that are good for 14 days. So we just wanted to come and kind of get some feedback on, what the consensus was to move ahead, and then we can come back with a detailed cost and price and do a budget amendment at a later time. So yeah, I think we just go for some feedback if you guys have it, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you, Justin. Yes, David.
Justin, I thought this was a fantastic report. You really looked at every angle, and I'm not using the pun, but it was every angle from that to encircle the pond, and I thought you gave good options. I think the court and finish is by far the best because it looks okay, it's nice, it's gonna hold up, it seems like. And I would like us to see us do option 1 through 3 with the court and finish, the $32,000 cost, and then up to the $15,000 for landscaping. That's my desire because I think you are putting every bit of safety by doing that. Not just for cars going in it, but also potential like what we had with the lawn mowing. And as you said, I mean, you're not getting it completely, but if they come from the other side, that sign's going to stop them. So I like what you did with the whole project. The whole report was fantastic, but the second option, 1 through 3, with the court and finish is what I think is best.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Justin.
Anyone else? Mindy?
Where did the mower go in?
It was this kind of southern corner here. If you can, the corner of, I guess, the stoplight of Main Street and Highway 412. Could you see that?
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that sentence in your report, couple of sentences that talked about a bad situation becoming a worse situation if someone runs into that guardrail and flips over, that kind of took me aback a little bit. So both vehicles that have gone into the pond have come from 412 and hit the pond. So they were going at a faster rate, most likely. I'm not sure and still there's that's the area where there could be the flip over, so I'm still concerned about that. I'm not sure why we need the whole pond encircled, personally. That's my, so if we have to my preference would probably be option 1 with the landscaping, except that I am concerned about that flip over. But
Justin, I thought you addressed what she just brought up about a car flipping. By raising it up higher, the guardrail would go up further up away from I thought you said that was your solution.
Oh, no, I may have misspoke. I was referring to the height of the vehicles as variable, because if you had a higher vehicle, like a pickup truck that was higher off the ground with the center of gravity being higher, it could make it worse, actually.
Carol?
And it's a very challenging, there's just so many variables. We just wanted to make everybody aware that is one possibility, but it's also possible that with the other truck coming in flat, it would have most likely prevented it.
Well, it is. It's interesting that you said in the case, the two cases, one could have flipped over, and one couldn't have. So, or one might not. So, you definitely don't want to make a bad situation worse.
And I
Carol?
agree with that. And when I'm looking at this, I think when you look at option 2 along Main Street, I don't think the vehicles are going as fast as they're going on 412. And I'm talking because there's a stop sign there and they're going to be coming up. And the same way with on the other main, because the Main Street kind of breaks off. I really think that just doing along 412, the option 1, and I don't have a problem with, is it Cortan? I don't know how you pronounce that.
I believe that's right, yes.
I think the powder coating is pretty, but it might be distracting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, depending on what color you get. So I would pick option number 1, and I like the landscaping because I have Liriope and it's pretty easy to maintain, and you don't have to do much except with a weed eater maybe to cut it back. So that's my opinion.
Madam Mayor.
Yes. Yes, Marla.
Justin, I have just a couple of comments. I believe option 1 is the best with the Corton. I do question, have you looked into making the guardrail 2 rows of metal instead of just 1 to maybe prevent the flip over? I don't know how it would set down in there, but have you looked at that?
No, that's a good suggestion. That's not a standard detail.
Right,
We're kind of working
right.
within basically RDOT's framework from that point of view. I could do some research and see if that's something you would have to dig it deeper, because as you go higher, it's going to tend to push harder.
Right.
So that would be something we could do some research into.
I just, because you said because of the flip over and stuff, I think if we could make the height, but the feasibility and the cost of it. So, but it might be something just to look into. But I am option 1, court and finish. It's hard to like rust, but I'm going to do it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Reed.
Justin, I like option 1 with the Corton, and I like option 4 as well with the landscaping.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Brad.
So I'm gonna throw a monkey in this wrench. Are you ready?
Monkey grass.
Oh, sorry,
Already
that's
got
the
the
monkey
monkey
grass.
grass.
I apologize. No matter what we build, and I've been retired for I feels like a long time. Bad things are gonna happen. There are gonna be accidents on 412. That pond's been there a long time, and we've had 3 tragedies. And this rail with that slope, if we all live long enough, there will be a vehicle that will launch it over. If a person is intent and not in the right state of mind and traveling in a vehicle, bad things happen. That's just the way that works out. I like option 1. You do the landscaping, but I'm going to throw this into the mix here. As we look at this aerial view, you can see some of the rough stone along the drainage areas there. And so if we're concerned about flipped overs, if we're really concerned, and 412 is the high rate of speed, we would reduce the interior profile of that wall, which means we bring in the large stone, which you wouldn't see from the roadway cosmetically. If you did a drone view like we have now, you'd see it. And we reduce the profile of that wall on the interior side. If we're talking about safety, and if we're talking about life, and our PD and FD, our city workers, whoever it is, if we can keep a vehicle upright, out of water, and semi-approachable, that increases the survival rate, because it's all about time. And I know that isn't in there, and I've been thinking about it, and I wanted to surprise you. You're welcome.
So if I understand correctly, you're suggesting maybe along the edge come in and with some large stone and
reducing that profile. The biggest problem with a city employee in the 2 incidents, and I'm sure I don't do that line of work anymore, but I can guarantee you, dropping down that wall, the officers getting in the water, time of year, all those things, it's just real common sense. It makes it difficult. You could see the damage is, last time I checked, it's still there from the last entry, right, where that wall fell in.
Oh, okay. So, or are you saying maybe bring the wall down closer to the water?
I'm just talking, bring stone in from the wall and slope it,
Oh, okay.
so you get rid of that street.
Like
Whoop,
that
you
end,
went to your personal emails.
like the northeast
Yeah,
corner.
right on
Yeah,
your
like that,
purple line.
yeah.
Like
Yep.
the
Okay, I see.
northeast corner, just
You're just reducing that wall, because that's what we're really talking about.
You're making
And-
a gradual slope instead of a straight up and
But
down.
it's interior, and we don't lose the cosmetics of the fountain. And if you do have somebody punch through that rail because of slope, it reduces that. Once again, that may be an accident report, but the information I gathered from that's the area. That's the danger zone.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, David.
Justin and I had recommended 1 through 3 because I guess I hadn't really looked over this map a whole lot. I thought the rail on the option 2 was closer to the pond. Where is it on here that the mower went in? Is it down here?
It's
I
that
thought it was-
green.
I thought it was up here.
No, it was where you first pointed.
It's
right
right
there.
here?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. I had all along been thinking it was up here was why we needed this. I thought it was gonna be a guardrail up here because I thought the mower went in there. I think Brad's idea in fact, somebody had said something to me a while back of getting some of the larger rock like we have down in Sager Creek could actually act as a barrier if we wanted to put them along the top. But I think it's a great idea that even if you did have somebody flip, you put the rock right, you're saying at the bottom of the wall, right, Brad? Like an outline of the wall, but with rocks, that if a car did go in, it would probably land on the rocks first and probably save them going in the water. The reason I brought this up and didn't let it go was because I had been surprised when it got put in and built that it was so far of a depth from the ground down to the water. And when I first saw that, I've always been afraid we'd have a kid fall in and drown. And I think Brad's idea is awesome to just, I don't know, at least where there has been the wrecks, to put something like that or some of these bigger rocks. Heck, maybe you outline the entire interior with some rocks that if anybody, but like Carol said, nobody's speeding right in here. And I thought that was just because of the mower, so it's up to everybody else whether we just do number 1. But I definitely think the sloping, whatever Brad was calling it, I can't remember, but that would do a double protection almost in a way. And if we did not do a barrier or rocks or something and it happened again, I just think we have to do something to show that we're being proactive on it. And so I appreciate what you've researched.
Madam Mayor, I don't think we can predict every scenario that might happen, and I think this is the best we can do. I do like what Brad said. I think it makes very good common sense. I'm still with option 1.
And Madam Mayor, so the idea of the landscaping is really to cover up as much as possible the rusty guardrail, the rust-colored guardrail, right?
Well, it would actually be
Well,
on the back.
right, maintenance, but also, will there be enough that it will kind of?
Yeah, well, it'll actually
Hide it
be
a little bit.
kind of on the backside.
Oh.
We had the discussion of
There won't be any on the side closer to the highway?
yeah, that's not listed right now. We did have a discussion of maybe taking some of those plants. I think even well, I don't have a good picture here, but further down on Mount Ald, we could even match with those. But there are more bushes. I can't think of the name of them right now, but planting a few of those along the front of it just to kind of hide it.
I would be very much in favor of that, because I know one of the concerns that people have had about a guardrail is it's not as appealing and attractive, and we've tried to make that area very attractive. And so if we can put the safety barrier there, but also create some aesthetic aspects, that would be helpful.
Which
I
grass?
thought the purpose of the liriopy was so you didn't have to put mowers in there.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
was in
Yeah.
the.
Yeah,
that
And
was
I
in your
misunderstood that.
report.
I'm just saying it would be helpful on the other side too to hide the guardrail.
No,
what
it
we
was
can
in the
do.
report to not have to have a chance of the mower, anybody going in there again when they're mowing, which it's a great looking, what do you call it? Monkey grass?
Liriopy.
Ripey, whatever. It's a good
Monkey grass
thing
is
that you
different.
don't have to take care of a lot.
different.
Okay, so I think kind of we've gotten some direction. Lisa, you have yet to speak. Would you like to speak?
Yes, can you go back to that map? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I agree with one, and I agree with Director Smiley that we can't predict everything. And I understand having the guardrail all the way around. I don't see it necessary all the way around, but in that corner where that lawnmower went in, that's still right there, an intersection that can, a lot of force, if a car wreck was to happen, could still cause of even blocking just that little corner right there. But then I don't know what if that would look stupid or not. I don't want it to look bad there.
You're saying maybe to just come around the corner a little further just to get is it okay?
Yeah, because there's a lot of force in that right there. That's still on 412, even if you're going toward Walmart and you get in a bad wreck. I mean, I've been in some pretty bad wrecks, and yeah, you don't realize your car will go anywhere. And so I do like the idea of the landscaping and the choices you made on the landscape.
Lisa, you're talking about where that green box is?
What? No, it's where the lawnmower went in. That green. Oh yeah, the
Yeah,
green
that's
box
what
is the
she's talking
landscaping.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd probably be better to curve that.
Yeah, instead of going all the way around, because I agree with Director Hunt that that seems they're slower on that side, but in that corner.
That is an intersection. If there is an accident there, it can be coming from 412. It can be coming from Main Street, coming out onto. Yeah, there's a good possibility that could end up in that corner. So, yeah. Okay, so I think that we've gotten good direction for you.
Yes, thank you.
And you can go back to the drawing board and bring something back for the board to consider.
Yes.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Good job. Next is our July financials.
Madam Mayor, you have the, Madam Mayor and Board, you have the financials in front of you. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact myself or Christina in Finance. If it's okay, I will continue with my admin
Yes, sir,
report.
please. Yes.
Director Burns, I think your idea about the stone is interesting, and I think there might be a project that we know about that might have some excess stone just down by the river. So we will we'll investigate that and see if they need to get rid of some stone down there. Yeah. We have a number of expenditures to report in the electric department. $50,335 for 5,000 feet of primary wire for inventory. Another $52,500 for 7 pad-mounted switchgear vault assemblies for inventory and general line extensions in the electric department. $40,060 for another 5,000 feet of slightly smaller aluminum primary wire. $37,348 for 2 3-phase pad mount transformers, and finally $47,145 for 30 1-phase, single-phase pad mount transformers. And in the Public Works Water Department, $33,360 for 2,000 tons of stone. Part of this is for inventory, and part of it is for the water line that's being extended north on Highway 59. We received a couple of grants. One is for a drainage project that we've been working on in the Willows Addition, Willow Court. There's a small detention basin there that I don't think was ever built correctly or designed appropriately. And so we received a state hazard mitigation grant from the Arkansas Department of Emergency Management in the amount of $100,000. The project the grant is for 75% of the project cost. It will not completely solve 100% of some of the drainage over there, but it's going to go a long way to start that project and begin working on making improvements to that drainage area. We also received a grant for the Lake Francis Washington Street Sidewalk project. We were awarded a total of $197,215 for that project. $125,000 came from the Transportation Alternative Program funding through RDOT, and the other $72,215 came through the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission through the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, also as part of that through the Highway Infrastructure Program. So that would assist with constructing almost 3,200 feet of a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk along East Francis Drive and South Washington to connect some of the sidewalks that we already have over there in that area. One of the issues that came up when we had the accident, the employee accident there at the pond, was the issue of tourniquets. And we, in reviewing and trying to rehash and review that incident, we decided that it would be appropriate for all city vehicles to have tourniquets in their vehicle. And so the fire department has been able to procure tourniquets for every city vehicle, and they're going to be doing training for all city personnel on how to use those tourniquets, and they're also going to complete training on the idea of CPR and the AED machines, which we are, I think, past due, and partly because of COVID, to renew every employee's training on CPR. So I think that's a wonderful thing that the fire department is doing, and we want to stay on top of that to make sure that we have the tourniquets in our vehicles and also that we're all trained on CPR. We've all seen or heard over the various years concerns about speeding. One of the things that we included in the 2021 budget was, I think, $10,000 for a couple of flashing speed limit signs, and they're reasonably portable. They appear to be permanently installed right now on HICO, but they're intended to be portable, that we could move them from one location to the next. So if you're driving on HICO north of Sherry Whitlock, you'll see these flashing signs, and they're going to flash your speed limit. They'll show your speed limit if you're driving the speed limit. They'll flash if you're driving up to 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. If you're driving greater than 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, they're going to flash, and periodically they're going to have a red and blue flashing light. So the intent is to try to show you as a driver you're speeding and to slow down in some of those areas. And we may find areas where we want to permanently install them based on, continuing speeding issues. But right now the idea is to install them in certain areas as we try to determine, if we do a traffic study, that there's a speeding problem, rather than using the police department's trailer and leaving it there for a short period of time because it's very mobile. We will install these lights for a longer period of time, and then hopefully in the 2022 budget we'll have some monies to maybe buy a few more. And what you might see is that in those areas where we have ongoing speeding problems, again, we just place them permanently so that it's constantly reminding me to slow down. And then I wanted to thank every entity that donated to the ADA Fishing Pier and Kayak Launch. And you have before you the list of those entities, and I want to take the time today to personally thank them on behalf of the city, on behalf of this board, and behalf of the public for their generous donation. Megabyte Computer Center donated $250. Centennial Bank donated $1,000, as did the Chamber of Commerce, John Brown University, the Siloam Springs KIA Memorial Committee, the Siloam Springs Kiwanis Club, Roush Coleman Homes, Rissler Homes, the Siloam Springs Rotary Club, the Courtyard Apartments, and the Siloam Springs VFW Post 1674. Fat Tire Bike Shop donated $1,500. Kale Properties donated $2,000, as did Victory Service Dog Ranch. The Siloam Springs Regional Hospital has made the commitment to donate $2,000, but we had to give them some information, and so we're waiting on that check, but they have assured me that that check is coming, but I haven't received it as of today. The American Legion Siloam Post 29 and family donated $3,750. Lazy Boy donated $4,000. Simmons Food $5,000. Grand River Dam Authority donated $7,500, and Arvest Bank donated $12,500 to that project. So currently, to date, we've received the $48,500, and with the commitment from the regional hospital, that grand total would be $50,500. And again, I want to thank each and one of those entities for their very generous donations. And as I told you, when you approved that project, that total commitment paid for about a third of that project. And we couldn't have done it, in my opinion, without the help of all of these wonderful organizations within this city. I would be remiss if I said that any other organization that I'd failed to contact is interested in donating. By all means, reach out to me here at City Hall. I didn't go around and knock on everybody's door. I just reached out to a number of organizations. Some made the commitment, some did not. They weren't unable to. But if there's any other entity that's interested, we will be more than happy to help offset that cost for the city. In partnership with the Northwest Arkansas Council, the fire department is also going to be hosting a COVID vaccination clinic at the library in the meeting rooms on Tuesday, September 14th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. The clinic will be a walk-in clinic, so you don't have to pre-register. The Northwest Arkansas Council asked us if we would partner with them to hold another clinic here in Siloam Springs, and we made the arrangements to do so. As far as the COVID update, you have the numbers there in front of you. Siloam Springs, as far as the new cases for a 14-day period per 10,000 population, you can see there that back on August the 16th, that was our high point, 111 cases over a 14-day period. On August the 23rd, that rolling 14-day period, we had dropped down to 93, which was similar to what we had in early August. And then at the end of August, that 14-day period has dropped now to 65. So the numbers are looking a little better, but they're still high compared to where we were in July and late June. And you can see the other cities there. We're still ranked about number 5 on that list of 10 cities with as far as the number of new cases per 1,000. And the last 2 pages have the same sort of data that you've had in the past as far as daily active cases per the county. Benton County is setting at 5.54. Washington County setting at 7.43. Those numbers are down based, that's as of September 6th. Those numbers are down a little bit based on the numbers we saw in August and moving a little closer to back what we saw in July. And you have the same thing for the Northwest region there. In the hospital regions, we're at 6.13 cases per 1,000. Madam Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. At this time, we will have our directors' reports. And before I start with the directors, I just have a couple of comments I would like to make. First of all, I'd like to thank Philip and our fire department and all our other city departments for their service and how they take care of our citizens. Tonight was a perfect example. Lisa acknowledging what Mr. Collins did for her husband. I think that we have moved forward in helping that happen. We're getting tourniquets for all of these individuals that are out there in the streets. Never know when there's going to be an opportunity for them to help someone. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fire department giving the training for that. I also want to say thank you to all the organizations and the businesses that helped with the ADA fishing pier. I think this is a great project. We all agree with that, and I'm really excited to see that being used whenever it's completed. And the other is, I have a question about the clinic, vaccination clinic. Do you know if they will be giving the Pfizer or the Moderna?
I am told they will be giving the Pfizer.
Thank you, because I know there are a lot of people that have been asking if that would be available, so thank you very much. And with that, I will ask Lisa if you would start for us tonight. We'll go around, and Marla, you will end for us, please. Lisa?
I want to thank Rosa Robinson for coming all the way from Fayetteville to speak to us. It's hard for citizens to come in and speak to us, so for her to do that from another city, I say thank you. This Saturday, September 11th, we're having a non-political prayer. It's to pray for the foundation of our community, our nation, and our world. Pastor Tim Estes, Pastor Mike Horton, Pastor Greg Baskin, and Pastor Wes Flaw will be leading the prayer. And we have T-shirts for participants. The verses on the T-shirt are intercession prayer verses, and then the prayer, the verse on here is for putting on the armor of God. And that's all I have. Thank you. It's Saturday at 10 a.m.
Saturday at 10.
At the parking lot. In the parking lot is City Hall.
Thank you, Lisa. Reed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Recently, my wife and I have spent a little time out at City Lake Park. And I want to commend those who have worked on that. And I really appreciate the city taking the time, the effort to get that built. But even more so is the maintaining of it. Wow. If you've got disc golf courses with their own fairway, I mean, they're taking a little time with this, and you can see where they have worked on the pathway where the water may have washed it out a little bit, or the boards being repaired on the bridge. So we not only have something that's wonderful today, but things are in place to where it'll be good tomorrow and the next. This last Saturday night, my wife and I went to a concert out in the park. The weather cooled off for us a little bit. Afterward, we walked over and were able to have dinner in our downtown. Afterward, we just walked up and down the downtown a little bit. Got a little bit rain, which stopped a couple of us, but the rest of us stayed out in it. And it was a beautiful evening. And all this happened within just a couple of miles of where we live. And wow, we have something really, really good here in this community, and I think we need to acknowledge it and just appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Carol?
Well, I want to thank Lonnie Collins for his service. I know the Rissler family really appreciates it. And I think I'm pleased that we're going to be putting in tourniquets in all the cars. We also have defibrillators, right? Do we have them in some of the city cars or all of them?
We have AED machines in city facilities. I think I don't know if the police department has the machines in their cars.
Okay.
I'll have to do some checking.
I'm just curious about that. And I want to thank all those that donated for the fishing and the kayak. And there's one thing I want to address that this is a pet peeve of my husband's, and it's the grass clippings in the street. And I know we've addressed this before, but it's not only an aesthetic thing, it is a safety reason. I've heard some comments about how dangerous it is for motorcycles when there's grass clippings in the streets. And I would just like everybody to just think about what they're doing. It's not that hard to direct your mower the opposite way and get it blowing back into your yard, or take a blower and blow it out of the street. Just think of your neighbors, think of those that are driving down the street. And then I've heard some comments about citizens' electric bill, and they think it's high, and it may be high because of the season that we're in and our weather, but they're also saying it's because the city is charging them for the amount that GRDA charged us. And I want them to understand that the city agreed to pay that without passing that on to the citizens. And I think that was a remarkable thing, so they shouldn't be seeing that. But if they, and I've looked at the utility bills, and there's a way to look at the comparison from last year to this year. But remember that the utility bill doesn't only include the electricity, it includes your water, it includes your trash, and your sewer. So just keep that in mind, and I hope everybody has a good week. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Carol, I also had seen several posts on Facebook that people had been asking questions as to why their electric bill was 50 to 100% higher this summer than last summer. And the fact that we don't have extraordinarily hotter days this summer than last summer. And some of the comments were that they've called City Hall and they're told that this is just the way it is. And I think you can look online on your bill and you can see the comparison. But I just wanted to make sure we haven't had a huge rate increase in 1 year, have we, Philip?
No, sir. The only rate increase would have been the standard increase that's in code from year to year. So there's been no new.
But it's not a huge amount.
No, it's not a huge
Mine
amount, no.
hasn't gone up that much.
Well, this was brought up on several
And I saw that.
different people and lots of comments about it. So I just wanted to bring it up and make sure that we check that, make sure there's not some computer glitch somewhere that's charging too much. But Philip, please, let's look at, we've heard so many complaints, some kind of parking expansion at the kayak park. If it's something we can put on early 22, we've just had so many people.
If I may, we are trying to design a new drive lane, entrance lane, and we'd like to pave the overflow parking that's there today. We're working with the original benefactor to see if there's some options that they can assist us with that. What I've been told since I've been here is that the original design for the kayak park had twice the amount of parking than it does today.
Really?
And the county, for whatever reason, because at that time it had to have county approval, cut the parking in half. Now, if we pave the current overflow parking, that will increase from about 64 to 105 or something like that parking. There's always going to be a greater demand than there is for parking down there. So yes, we are trying to, through the county doesn't want anybody parking on the street, on the shoulder. We don't want people parking in unauthorized parking spaces. So we're trying to come up with a plan, but the quickest and fastest way to do it was to say, if you park illegally, you have the option of being towed. And the idea is to go down there and give them warning, but 20 minutes, if you don't move, it's likely to be towed. There's some issues with the rock that cause some erosions when we have flooding problems down there. So we're trying to work on a design, not unlike the guardrail, but with post and a heavy-duty rope that would prevent some of that and then not cause the erosion problems. And there are some other issues that we're investigating based on how we believe WOCA will be operated, that we'd like to bring forward to the board in sometime in the future, but we want to investigate all these options. But Director Allen and board, the biggest thing is, as I've said before, it would be nice if it was all enclosed and we could have an occupancy limit. And the only way to do that is to control it by the number of parking spaces. And in the biggest, on the weekends like Labor Day weekend, we're probably going to have 120 to 150 cars down there, and we have overflow parking, counting that, like I said, for maybe 105. So we might look at expanding that a little bit, but we're never going to have enough parking, and we would like to find a way to control it and see how we can do that best. But it's an ongoing issue, and it will continue to be until we can find a way to really say this is the limit and there's no, and prevent any ability to illegally park.
I just wanted to make sure we're looking at it because we've had so many people. And I was impressed that this lady came from Fayetteville. And I was impressed that she's used it so much and enjoyed it and brings her family all the time. That's wonderful. I wanted to thank our Fire Chief Kreiner for allowing some of our people to go to Louisiana to help on the devastation from the hurricane. I thought that was somewhat reminiscent of when some of our people went for 9/11, in that we, even a small town like Siloam, can help big disasters, and I appreciate that, Chief. I don't know if anybody listening on the TV or anybody here, I've been asked if anyone knows what happened to the signs that were on the incoming 412 on both ends that said, "Welcome to Siloam Springs, where Jesus Christ is Lord." Those were not put up by the city. They were on private property. But at some point they got taken down, and a constituent has asked me if I know where they are or what happened to them, or I have no clue. But I didn't know if someone listening might know. Please get with me so I can pass it on. I'm just making sure there's not something else. I think that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, David. Mindy?
I too would like to see, thank you for the explanation about the kayak park. We've got friends who live down that area, and we've heard of people that have come here to express concerns about it, and it is great. I mean, it's a good problem to have a lot of people wanting to come over to Siloam to use kayak park, but it's also something we don't want to cause frustration for those who come over from Fayetteville or wherever. And as she said, it gets chaotic in just trying to get a vehicle in or out. My understanding from some that live down there is those rocks, while they understand the purpose of them, have actually caused people to just keep moving north and parking in yards, as opposed to on the street. So whatever we can do, and we're at the end of the season now, so maybe before next season we can have something that may work a little bit better. Thank you, Steve, for the update on the street and sidewalk plan. Appreciate that. Thank you to city staff for applying for grants. That's always helpful to get free money in to help us with the projects that we want to do. I appreciate the efforts at being fiscally responsible. Also happy for those flashing speed limit signs. I think you and I had talked early on about something similar to that, so I'm glad to see that. I think if others are like me, sometimes, especially when you get on some of these roads that are considered excellent, it's a little easy to get going a little too fast without really realizing what you're doing. So if you have those flashing signs telling you, that could curb some of that speeding. And on a little bit more somber note, Saturday is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And so my thoughts and prayers to all who were involved with that, affected by that. I think we were all impacted in some way or the other. I think all of us probably remember exactly where we were, exactly what we were doing when we heard that a plane had hit the World Trade Center. I know myself, I thought it must have been a small plane with a inexperienced pilot, and to see it all unfold, it was just horrendous. Anyway, thoughts and prayers, and just gratitude for those in the military who have been fighting for us for the last few years as a result of that incident.
Thank you, Mindy. Brad?
Power outages downtown around Alpine Street, formerly known as St. Luke Street. That's my pitch to rename Alpine historically. You're welcome. We do so well on power, so when I hear people complain, I just like, well, because I don't have any problems. So I don't know if that's just the building construction that wasn't done right. I'm just curious about that. And I hear the concerns on Stone Ridge. This gentleman isn't the first person. There are major concerns that they are going to build a apartment complex out there off 412, and And when you have a nice residential area and you start hearing scuttlebutt, we're gonna find out what that preliminary map looks like, and hopefully we'll be able to address that. But those folks out there have a very nice residential neighborhood. It's off the beaten path. They like it. It's quiet, and they want to keep it that way. So I think that's their overall concern, according to the HOA folks. The kayak park, I was a city employee, and it was a fantastic thing. It's a great training facility. It's a lot of positive things. I was just down, you got to get there early, and I paddle upstream, and I leave early, and they're coming. The folks, the lady here just earlier this evening, they're putting in upstream and they're coming down, so that's their shuttle vehicle. What she isn't mentioning, because she's very kind, is Arkansas Game and Fish has done a ton of work at Chamber Springs, which the sign keeps disappearing, and they do exactly the same problems we have there. People want to the water, and there has to be regulation, it has to be enforced, and we're short on enforcement, and we don't want to be enforced, and it's a catch-22. And we're going to be fighting that battle, and I hope WOCA gives us an idea, and some of us on the board aren't going to like the solution. I already know what the solution needs to be, and that's going to come down the pike. Northwest Arkansas, the growth and the expansion in the outdoors is going to require regulation. Oklahoma's already been there, and we need to go there, and I hope our representatives are working on that. That's a huge moneymaker, but it has to be regulated so we can all enjoy it equally. That's my spill on that one. Chautauqua Amphitheater, yes. Director Carroll, I bailed because of some raindrops. You're 100% correct. And my child dog wasn't behaving properly. That's my other excuse. But it was a glorious evening, and I could just tell you the best time to see Memorial Park, Chautauqua Amphitheater, in that library section is about 5:30 in the morning. There's nobody there. But, and sunrise is another good one. It's a fantastic sight. The crowd was a little bit thin, but that's a Memorial Day weekend or Labor Day weekend, and it's tough to get that on. What else do I have here? I had, I'm not going in it tonight, but after the last couple of board meetings, and I like it. It challenges me, and I have to go back and do homework. And I have to dig through my archives and my brain and my tablet and notes, and I got to reach out. And I just started digging through, what expenditures have I, as a director on my second term, been on, as a firefighter down at the firehouse watching these board meetings. What expenditures did those folks do? What did Madam Mayor do when she was a board member? Director Allen is the mayor, as a board member, Cameron. And so I dug through it, and I find it's educational, and I call it lock and loading. I'm just gonna put it back in my magazine and wait till I need to pull it back out again. But it reminded me where I voted. And I did vote for hospital funds and to rename them to community development. And then I started looking at the board members that were on that board. And Carol's the only one here. But Scott Jones is back in the community, or back in the area. Lucas is out of town. Brown was gone. He was on when the city administrator got hired. And everybody on that board that has served on those boards, and when I was a city employee, voted for expenditures, and they're elected officials. And I just think just respecting that is very important. And like Director Allen pointed out, if we drop the ball on something, it's been my experience, if I send an email to the city administrator, he will make that correction. And so I know the correction is going to be made with Mr. Fuller, and James was on some of these votes, and I was really surprised on, some of the votes that James Fuller had voted on. And it reminded me when we voted nay and when we voted A. And so what were the yes and no's on that? So, you know, this goes back to 2011, and we've been working on a lot of stuff. And I see Siloam today. And I mentioned it a little bit when we had our workshop, but I'm going to mention it one more time. There is a huge opportunity on our near horizon that is going to challenge us as a board. I'm going to respectfully request we put a lot of thought when that comes in. That comes down the pike. It's going to require all of us to dig a little bit deeper into why we should stop, drop, and roll maybe on some of our projects and lend a hand towards that and understanding what that looks like for our horizon, for the future, for the next generation. It's a trickle-down economics that I just don't think we should be a full partner with. As I dug through these minutes, all the way back to David Cameron, because I didn't want to go any farther, because I don't know if Mark Latham, I think he's retired now, so he can't defend himself. David could still reach out and spank me over the technology. But even back then, he stated we should do projects with partnerships. And I think we've carried that over even today. We're big into this partnership thing. And the economic development, the grant money available in these partnerships has allowed us to expand projects much larger than we have in the past. And the fire chief, the police chief is in a much better place. If you go a couple of department heads back, they can tell you when we had economical crisis. Director Allen, Madam Mayor, Carol Smiley, you're on the board when we just didn't have money. That's just the way it was. We're in a different time now. AML, several years ago, we had a motivational speaker that told us there are no problems, only solutions. And that's what we have on our plate today with streets, with infrastructure, the balancing that with economical drivers and quality of life. There are no problems, there's only solutions, and we have to find that balance. Thank you.
Brad. Marla?
That's hard to follow. Good job. History lesson. I just have some quick things that just I want to revisit some things we've talked about. We had one time talked about a trail along the railroad track under the bypass. And I'd like for us to look into that because it seems like it would be safe if we could get the railroad to work with it, KCS to work with us. And I think that might be something we want to revisit. And I have a bike now. Has a flat tire, but I have it. So, yes. I haven't wrote it yet. Also, can the board packet maybe include the transcript from the last planning and zoning? I don't always have time to go back and watch the whole meeting, but if I could have like a short transcript of it or something where we could just kind of see. No? Okay, thank you. Right. Right.
No.
Thank you. And I would also like to say that I've heard some comments that with the electrical issue, they were switching out and putting in new meters, and the new meters charged extra or something. So, you know, it's all out there. It's just the time of year we're in. If you're using more water to water your lawns or flowers, it's going to be a little bit higher. But, I mean, if anybody that has issues wants to reach out to any of us, I'm sure that we can talk you through your issue and see if there's a solution to your problem. Right. Okay. The American Legion post. they came to the Manna Center and presented some funding to me, and they said, "You're on the board. We need you to mention this during your director's report." And I went, "Okay." Well, they challenged us to go to one of their bingo nights because it's funding projects in town, and they would like to see us down there sometime. And so I'm just telling you that they would like to see your happy face down there.
I don't believe in gambling.
David, there's no money. It's a dauber, okay?
Oh.
Yeah. So, but no, I think that, even if we just went in there and bought a Coke or a candy bar and visited with them for a minute, they'd be happy. Yeah. And I would like for us to relook at the downtown commercial zoning. We've stepped up our body art. I'm still not happy with everything, but it was a step in the right direction. And I think we need to look at what downtown is and the different zonings we have down there, the C1, C2. How do we differentiate? And, the way that I see one business compared to another business may differ from someone else, but I think that we need to be consistent, and our downtown goes, down Wright Street and then around to East Main, and our commercial is not consistent for that, and I think we need to look at that. And I think that's everything, and with that, I make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.